Welcome, everyone, to the Warbound podcast, a casual World of Warcraft podcast. I'm your host, Aleris, and with me today for episode 12 is Theo.
Yeah, welcome. We're back. We're not taking another week off. We're gonna get this done before the holidays, so that we can not have multiple weeks off, multiple weeks in a row. So we're here to do some more yapping.
Yeah, it's hard to yap when dads show up on your doorstep all of a sudden,
Yep.
and it's hard to yap when you're traveling with a toddler, and yeah, there's a lull in the WoW content. We have Siren's Isle and some turbulent time ways to get us through to 11.1. But
That's
uh,
next week.
that's Siren's Isle is next week. I don't mind the ring. I think the ring mechanic will be fun. I think it'll be good. It'll buff your character, but the problem is I don't know how much more content I'm gonna be pushing the rest of this season. My
Yeah.
character is basically done. Uh, I'm not like full mythic kitted, but I'm full heroic kitted, and well, I'll let you give the viewers the news, the listeners the news on what we did yesterday.
Oh yeah, yesterday we finally got our first times 10 in our weekly group. So that was pretty exciting, and I was honestly shocked just because it was the first. Usually we'll warm up with a couple of eights and then move up to nines, tens, towards the end. But we just crushed out
Yeah, we
a 10 Dawnbreaker first
excuse my
attempt, and it
language,
was.
but we raw dogged that 10 right off the bat,
Yeah,
and
it was
it was smooth.
surprisingly.
I
Yeah, I mean, it was Don Baker, which I think is one of the easier ones. But even then,
well,
there's
we'll get to that later
a lot of
with
challenge,
tier
and yeah,
lists.
yeah. But there's a bit of a challenge, especially that second boss can be a bit of a pain spot,
Yeah.
and even the first
Then
boss.
later in the night, I bricked
So
the stone
it was,
vault
it
key,
was nice.
so it was good.
No,
Wiping
you didn't.
us not
You didn't break the
understanding how
stone
I
wall.
had to
We
pull.
we had 17. We had 17 deaths. I don't think that was just one pull,
Yeah,
but.
yeah. I found it funny that the plus 10 that we did complete the only death was our Boomkin Druid. Blizzard, please just give them another defensive. Please.
Yeah.
Bear form is not an intuitive defensive. Okay.
Oh no, it is. It just involves them using it, which you can't do that
Yeah,
to
but like, how
two
many other
units together.
classes pop their defensive and get a total DPS loss? Besides,
Yeah,
maybe paladins, because paladins does bop still
mages.
prevent you
Yeah,
from attacking? I don't think divine
yeah.
intervention
Or
does anymore, or divine
yeah.
shield or whatever it is. So, buff boomkins, not because I have one in my mythic plus group. I'm not being selfish. No, I
Right.
am. Yeah, it was a
It's
smooth run. I don't know. I didn't really expect much. I thought for sure eventually I would make a mistake pulling something, but Dawnbreaker we've done a lot. You're right. Despite being one of the like more complicated dungeons, it's one of the easier ones, I think. Certainly one of the faster ones. Um,
Yeah.
I just feel like there's a certain designer at Blizzard who makes really good dungeons that move, and they do
Yep.
a good job. And despite them being janky, and I don't want to hear anything from my viewers about Grimrail being a bad dungeon. It's one of the greatest dungeons ever built,
Yeah.
especially
Well, and
for
I think
Mythic
I think
Plus.
I think I mean, that's a take. But I think the nice thing with Dawnbreaker, and this is skipping too much. You know what? Never mind. I'm gonna save my Dawnbreaker rant for later because we're
Oh,
talking
okay.
talking too
Anyway,
much.
back in season one, we had a list
Yes.
of these dungeons out. Um, Theo, why don't you read off yours and mine lists to remind the listeners?
Yeah. Yeah, so we threw together
In
a
our
list of,
first
I believe,
episode.
when was this done? First episode, it was like, was it after the first week of season one, or maybe
No,
it
I
was
believe
just
it
after
was
the heroics week
before the Mythic
before the
Plus
season
season
came out?
started.
So this was like straight vibes. We were just throwing out, what we thought of the
Yeah.
dungeons, where we thought they were gonna fall in a list. And so this wasn't necessarily a tier list, but we had our list of like what dungeons we thought were gonna be the best, and going from worst to best, it looks like. So I had Siege of Borealis being what I was expecting to be the worst, then Arakara, Stone Vault, City of Threads, Necrotic Wake, Grim Batol, Mists of Tyr in the Scythe, and then Dawnbreaker. And then you had a list that was also having Siege as the worst,
Yeah.
then Stone Vault, Arakara, Mists, Grim Batol, Necrotic Wake, Dawnbreaker, and oh no, sorry, City of Threads, Necrotic Wake, Dawnbreaker, and then Grim Batol. So pretty similar, but we also wanted to kind of revisit that, not just list them 8-1 again, but this time actually make
Yeah.
a proper tier list and see if our ideas have changed after playing these.
Yeah, so now that we've gotten 1 plus 10 under our belt, we both have scores over
We're
2,000.
experts. We're
Um,
experts now.
we're basically experts. We're basically MDI experts at Season 1 War Within
Exactly.
dungeons. We know all the tricks and all that stuff. Just kidding. This is all just vibes still, probably.
Yeah.
This is all based on what our group leader told us to run. Because I certainly just told him what key I had, and then he made a decision most of the time. But we have our 4 tiers. We have Giga Farm. We have one bad boss. We have mid tier, which I couldn't think of anything else, and then we have the reroll tier, where it's a key that you get and you don't want to do. And I think I know my least favorite dungeon, Theo, but I'll let you start off because it's not
Yeah.
the same as
Well, are we
what's on
gonna
that
do
list.
exactly same with me? Are we gonna do them in? Do we want to do them in
Oh, we should do them in
alphabetical order?
alphabetical order. Yeah, which
Yeah.
is what I have set up here. Although
Yeah.
3 of them start with the, but that's okay. Our City of Echoes first.
All right.
Uh,
So
it's
that, and so
interesting,
I guess,
but I'll let you
yeah.
go first.
Well, and so I guess this is interesting also because I know that for score they've taken away the like needing tyrannical and fortified. But I feel like there's some dungeons, and I think this is the best example of being completely different on tyrannical versus fortified. I
Yeah,
think
we've
fortified,
smashed this on an
this
8
dungeon,
multiple times and
yeah,
then got to a
unfortified, yeah,
10, and it's impossible. The first boss is
yeah.
impossible. Now,
Well, yeah, the first boss, and I would say the last boss is quite literally on tyrannical. Anything higher than an 8, quite literally impossible to plug.
now
People
here's
are
here's the
absolute
thing
monkeys and
is
can't do it.
is I have Arakara City of Echoes. I have a tier of one bad boss, and is Arakara B tier A? I guess we're just gonna do A A tier, B tier, C tier, D tier. But um, is it B tier because just the final boss is impossible, or does the final boss make it so bad that you have to re-roll it?
I would say if it's a tyrannical week, I'm rerolling that key every single time. I would say Arakar is probably my least favorite dungeon in this season.
Okay, I will
So
put it
I
in
would be
re-roll.
putting it
I
down.
do think it belongs in one bad boss on my end because it's just the final boss. But there are some packs. We have gotten stuck on the first boss before in a 10, but we'll put it in the re-roll tier. We ran that dungeon more times than a couple of these other dungeons,
Yeah, yeah.
for sure.
And yeah, it's just I hate any dungeon that the hardest boss is at the end because you waste so much time getting to it,
Yeah.
and then you just get, especially pugging, you get to it with 13 minutes on the timer, and then the group wipes 5 times to that boss, and it begins to
So
hate.
next dungeon, City of Threads. How many times did we do City of Threads?
Um,
Once, maybe.
I think, yeah, maybe once or twice. I
I
mean,
think that's the
I pugged it
least.
more.
I think that's the least dungeon I did. I think I did it on a
Yeah,
6 once and never went back in.
Yeah.
Honestly, like when I'm smashing heroics, for whatever reason, I don't know what I don't know what's wrong about it on Mythic Plus, but we just never ran it. We just
Yeah. It just seems like a pretty,
as a group we decided it wasn't worth going into.
yeah, it just seems like a pretty forgettable dungeon. I think I would definitely say that I would say this is mid. Um, there's nothing like terribly wrong with it. I mean, the first boss is really fun in a group again, but annoying to pug. But that's with most bosses. Um, it's just there's nothing that I find super fun, and then also like the RP part after the first boss doesn't seem like it does anything other than waste our time. Um, like just give
Yeah.
us fast tracks to kill rather than
I know
I
in
know like
heroic
Warbound
groups at
is
least, the egg hallway is pretty frustrating because most people don't interrupt, especially in heroics.
yeah
So, but in a coordinated group, I'm trying to think of like our group, right? We're probably fine. So I'll put it in mid tier. Again, you're right. Like, there's no boss that's difficult, like the way
yeah
Arakara's final boss is.
yeah
And there's no. It's like gimmicky, but it's not like the whole dungeon's almost gimmicky. There's a couple of scary pulls up when you're heading up the stairs that can be pretty tough, but yeah, okay. I'm okay with mid tier. All right, Grim Batol. I believe I said this was going to be my favorite dungeon, and
yeah
it lived up to it in my opinion. I loved it.
yeah
I thought we ran it a lot. While the bosses were challenging in all the right ways, the only bad side was the caster packs basically throughout the dungeon, but once you get to like the forge room, the caster packs in there were pretty ridiculous. Blizzard really needs to look at their pack composition. I'm tired of packs as a tank that I get aggro on and they don't cast on me. If
mhm,
if I have aggro on a mob, whatever, I understand that like what do they have like Searing Blaze or whatever gets cast. It's like the channel cast that stuns the person. If that's cast at a random person, that's fine. That makes sense because that happens like once every 20 seconds. But when Shadow Flame Bolt, 2 shots of DPS, puts a massive healing absorb onto the target, that needs to go on the tank. That is intended to hit the tank. Those 3 mobs should be casting. Obviously, Shadow Flame Bolt should be interrupted if possible. The group should be pulled and then solar beamed or
yeah
mass stunned or whatever. But the tank should be taking that Shadow Flame Bolt. I have,
yeah
spell block for a reason. I have ways to deal with that, and DPS don't. And
yeah
it's not fair. It's not fun and it's not fair. However, Grimbatol was pretty good. I would argue it's one bad boss, though, and that bad boss is ad packs. Certain ad packs.
yeah. I can see that. I mean, and this was the worst offender of. I think this is the only dungeon that I've ever felt like this. At least, sorry for this season. I think it's the worst offender of a dungeon feeling drastically different depending on the group composition that you bring, or specifically like which healer I'm playing. I mean, as I'm playing an evoker, but that dungeon is actually infinitely easier for me to do, especially on fortified weeks on my druid, which is less, has 10 less item level on it because of the curse dispel. And then like if you have another person in the group that is also curse dispelling, then those
It's way
trash mobs that
easier.
you're talking about don't exist. They don't. The curses go out and you instantly dispel them. It's over. And I think I don't know. You know, I understand for like the doing a role playing game like in classic WoW, having different dispels is a really big part of their identity. But in Mythic Plus 2024, there's no I guess now 2025 for the next season there's no reason to have that nonsense if there's something going, especially with an
A
infinitely
dispel
scaling
should just
content.
dispel
Yeah,
whatever it's
it should
dispelling. Yeah.
especially like in infinitely scaling content, because eventually you're gonna hit that level where that, even if it's just a poison debuff, that becomes something that must be dispelled.
Yeah, I mean, there's a
There's
version
no
of the
way
game you can
around
play that's that, right? The classic is out.
it.
You can go play a holy
Yeah, exactly.
paladin and only dispel poisons and curses if you want,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
and not have a magic dispel. But like every class has a magic dispel, so why doesn't every class, not every healer, I should say. I do
Yeah.
agree with button bloat and stuff like that that
But
DPS and
yeah,
tanks probably shouldn't be able to
but
dispel themselves because
yeah,
healers need something to do.
yeah. But that, I would say that again, I agree with you. That's the only thing. I think Grimmitol is probably the dungeon I did the most of. Maybe the second I
It's
did the most of.
definitely first or second. Personally my favorite, but I love
Yeah,
Grim Batol since like Warcraft 2.
yeah,
Like the
yeah.
name is just awesome.
Awesome. Yeah.
It's one of
No,
my.
but I'm
It's like the first map in Warcraft 2 in the campaign that you're like kind of actually like doing something. I don't know if you
yeah,
remember, but like
yeah, yeah,
it's one where you like have to go take a sea island and it's like the first map that's not like build 6 farms and then you're done.
yeah,
So it just kind of has a memory in my mind of that. But overall, and it was one of my favorites in Kata. I think what they did to cut it down, to change the bosses, I guess I did love it because as a tank I could just hide in that alcove. But again,
oh yeah,
that boss
oh,
was
yeah.
still fun. That boss
Mm-hmm.
was fun to tank, to kite around the room, to dodge the tornadoes. It was a fun boss to do.
Yeah,
And even the final boss, pretty difficult with positioning, but again, fun and fun in like the right ways.
yeah,
Difficult in the right ways.
yeah.
Um, you were out that week, but I made one of our members heal me without a shield on the final boss of Grimbatol. And we were actually, it was an 8, so we were able to do it. But it was pretty funny to do that boss without a shield. My shield had broken, we had no repair bots. So that's a memory of season 1 that I'll keep forever, probably.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would put it in a Giga Farm if it wasn't for the ad packs. The ad packs,
Well, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, I still, I think I'd still put it in the top 2, but it's up to you. Yeah,
Maybe the bottom of Giga Farm. We'll see what else we
maybe
put up
fine.
there.
We'll see.
But
Yeah, we can always
but like
readjust.
I really think all those Shadow Flame casters at the middle boss
Mm-hmm.
just ruin the. It's like having one bad boss that ruins the whole dungeon.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, Mists of Tyrna Scythe. Just kidding. That's on Giga Farm. But dungeon is. It was the best dungeon in Shadowlands. It was the best dungeon this season.
Yeah. I
Well, it
mean,
was one of the top dungeons this season.
yeah. I think one of the top ones. I mean, I don't know honestly, and I don't know if you'd agree with me. I don't know why Blizzard doesn't. And I guess this season we had 3 of them. I think every dungeon should be a three boss dungeon. I think it makes the dungeons feel so much better. Three boss dungeons, 30 minutes
I
on the
think it
timing.
depends. I think you're right in that dungeons like vary wildly in terms of like how many bosses there are
Yeah.
and especially like the ads and the difficulty of the ads between the bosses.
Mm.
However, I think if you have something like I'm trying to think if there's any 5 boss dungeons, but like a 5
Not
boss
this season, but
dungeon that's kind
Theater of
of
Pain
like
is coming back.
which one?
Theater of Pain, which is coming back. Like comparing
Okay,
this to Theater
okay.
of Pain,
Or
there's no
like
comparison.
Siege, where you're like killing the giant and then running straight to
Hmm.
the tentacles. Um, I don't mind that. I actually like
Yeah.
ending the dungeon on 2 bosses personally. Just
Yeah.
a personal thing. So, but it depends on the ad packs. You can't have a 5 boss dungeon and have a bunch of freaking ads between.
Hmm.
But then there's on the other side, right? Dawnbreaker is a 3 boss dungeon and it's quick. And I feel like it's
Exactly.
very ad heavy on the front and then like
And then you have
almost
2
no
bosses
ads.
back to back.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
there's like 2
Yeah.
bosses down all of a sudden and you're like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah.
Um
Yeah. No, but I think Mist is pretty straightforward. I think it's no
yeah,
surprise that that's probably
best
everyone's
best
most
dungeon
playing
in
dungeon.
Shadowlands. At least in
Yeah.
terms of just like if I want to do a Mythic Plus, what keys am I looking for? Mists of Tyrna
Yeah.
Scythe. If I just want to do a plus
Yeah.
4, I'm not caring about what the dungeon is. I'm looking
Yeah.
for mists.
Because
Um,
there's some frustrating parts, but they're like not too bad. For me, like that last boss, because it's such a big room, is a healer, especially when I'm on
yeah, I
level
can see
12
that.
too.
Yeah, there's a lot of
That's a
chaos.
pain. People are all over the place. We've got even when I with our normal group, we've got two ranged, and they like to hang out in Narnia,
They
and
do
it's not
like
even
being
them
at max.
purposefully
Yeah,
doing
I
it.
feel like
Yeah,
if our
it,
group had 2 melee DPS instead of 2 range DPS,
it's it's so
we
much easier,
we would have an easier time.
and it's really bad in Pug. But
Last week,
again, it's not as bad as other
yeah,
dungeons.
this yesterday, right? Someone brought a rogue and as their alt, and it was like, oh, you
Yeah,
just skip stuff. Wow, that's easy.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, mists probably the top. We'll get to it, but I think there's going to be one dungeon that surpasses it for both
Yeah.
of us. Siege of Borealis. Um, so I have at the top I have mists and Grimbatol. I think Siege is just ahead of Grimbatol in Giga Farm A tier.
Oh, really? Okay. I was gonna say one bad. I was gonna put one bad boss. Um, just
It's like
because of
really like the scariest part is like the pirates with the Etten and the like the lizard pirates and the monkeys and
Mhm.
the bananas. That's the worst part.
Well,
Um,
and I still really hate the last boss, even though it's not as bad as like not that they took away the knockback and things. It's not as bad. I still
I
just
thought that was I was
hate that
wondering what
boss.
was happening because I was when we did it yesterday. I was like, why am I just like I felt like I was supposed to position better and I was able to just like stand on the DPS and not have to worry about anything and then they
Yeah.
would move out if
You
they got the bubble and I was like,
yeah. Well, because there used to be a
what's happening?
knockback from the tentacle, but
That's what
they
I
took that
remember.
away.
That's yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
And I
Um
think even without that though, it's just kind of I don't know. I think it's always it always feels lame. Even as a healer, I mean, I'm not the one doing the most DPS, but it feels lame to fight bosses where you're not actually fighting them. You're just
yeah, I agree. The
getting their
tentacle
tentacles
and
and
then the big boss is
yeah,
just like in there. I think the way you know what? I'd be okay putting this in one bad boss in that the last boss was redesigned poorly. That
yeah,
that the tentacle thing was just kind of even with the knockback being annoying was kind of easy to be honest. Like you
yeah,
get up to this area and there's 2 tentacles and you just kill one and then you kill the other and that's it. Like
yeah.
it
It
wasn't.
wasn't. It was never hard. It just wasn't fun.
And then with tyrannical like adding 30% health or whatever, it's like okay, the tentacles just take longer to kill now. It's not really
Exactly.
like the giant boss is fun when you're rushing around the pillar
Well,
and stuff and dodging
yeah,
stuff and he's leaving stuff behind. Even that like the Azerite cannon boss is a lot of fun. I mean,
yeah,
actually, the first 3 bosses of that dungeon, all great. Now that I'm thinking
yeah,
about it, all chaotic and great, and you feel like you're in a siege of a city and stuff. And you're right, that last boss just doesn't match the tempo that the other 3 bosses set.
yeah.
Um,
Exactly. Still
so
a lot
so
better. I
I,
mean,
I
not to go so
usually
far.
mean one bad boss, and that like Arakara, right? This boss sucked to do. I didn't want to go in here because I didn't want to do that boss, but it's one bad boss, and that boss was boring and wasn't exciting. And
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
I'm
And I
okay.
still think
Yeah, I think
it's one of the better dungeons of the season. Especially, I mean, we had this both expecting to be the worst dungeon in the
yeah,
season,
yeah. I
and it's
remember for
clearly
some
not
reason
that.
BFA left a bad taste in my mouth,
Yeah.
and I know it was
Exactly. Same.
specifically because of that boss. So they
Yeah.
obviously redesigned it because whatever they had in BFA wasn't good enough. I also remember the only time I went into Siege, and I don't remember if this is because they were breaking the seasons up with old dungeons yet, but I remember the first time I went into Siege was literally Season 2 BFA with the
Hmm.
Ajara mechanic, and that was like the
Oh
worst
yeah,
mechanic
yeah, yeah,
ever in Mythic Plus. Where
yeah,
then I have memories of like season 3 or whatever, season 4, I can't remember which, going into the Goblin dungeon and like using the Nazoth portals to like teleport and skip ads, and that was like
which is cool.
the how you did a dungeon changed, the pathing changed, and
Yeah,
when they had affixes that allowed you to change stuff and change your path, and that was fun. But like the
Yeah.
balls this week in Xalatath suck. I hate that. I hate that mechanic so much because there's just so many boss
Yeah.
mechanics or ad mechanics that just make it rough. She's had a couple of good abilities or a couple of good affixes, but some
Yeah.
of them I do like that it's slightly a different affix every week. So we'll have to
Yeah.
see what they do with
Exactly.
season 2. But okay, next one is the Dawnbreaker. That was the best dungeon this expansion this season.
Yep. I think, yeah,
Yeah,
I think hands down. I
and
mean,
maybe
it's
you're onto
everything that
something. The top 2 dungeons are 3 boss dungeons that are quick and fun.
exactly. I mean, no one's trying to be in a dungeon for 40 minutes just to deplete it. Like,
Yeah.
um,
I think while I thought at least the Dawnbreaker might be gimmicky, and there were a few like things to figure out. Overall, once people knew the pathing and where to go, it was a fun dungeon. You know,
exactly.
once our dungeon leader said land
Mhm.
at the back of the church and go in this back way, and it's janky back there because as a tank I'm backing up to the corner and my camera gets screwed up
Yeah.
and glitches out. But that's the kind of stuff that I like, is that eventually you find this pathing that works, that makes everything easier, lets you group the ads easier, and give you a place to fight. Like I like that Zach or our druid can sit on the rocks over there on the second mini boss and just like
And,
starfall away
and
while
ignore
we're doing
everyone.
stuff. Um,
Yeah.
but I'll let you give your thoughts for a minute.
Yeah. No, and I mean, I think it does everything. I mean, this was literally everything that no good offensive should have been. Just like the way they incorporated
Yeah,
dragon
jumping
riding
off the
into it,
ship. Yep, jumping off the
and
ship
it
to
felt,
collect the orbs is fun.
and
Yeah,
yeah, and just like the fact that, I mean, like, no good you thought would be super open ended, but like you couldn't kill the bosses until you killed certain trash mobs, and I guess you sort of have that with the lieutenant. I mean, theoretically, you could try to do that boss with a lieutenant up, but no one's ever going to do that. But like, it just Dawnbreaker felt a lot more open. And theoretically, while there was a route that we did every time, you could pull that dungeon in an infinite number of ways. Also, I think this is the best example of another thing that can make a dungeon really crappy is respawn points. And the nice thing about Dawnbreaker is you die on a trash pack and you are back in combat within 7 seconds. You hit
yeah,
release, you get on your mount, and you can get anywhere in the dungeon in 7 seconds.
yeah.
And that is what I mean, especially when you're talking challenges peril being an affix, you should not be punished 15 seconds for dying plus the walk back.
Actually,
You
now
should be
looking at
able
these, I
to get
wonder.
back.
I don't remember. I don't think we died a lot on Siege of Borealis, so I'm trying to think of like. I know Grimbatal we died a ton, and those have good respawn points.
Yeah, some
Like
of them. Yeah, if you die on like the third boss, that sucks, but that's the only one.
yeah, because you're running all the way from where the giant
Yeah,
guy spawns. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, but that
But
third
and I think,
boss really isn't too
yeah,
bad. So yeah,
I think the bosses are pretty good. That second boss is pretty brutal, but it's also nice because it's just, you know it's one specific like AoE phase every 45 or
yeah,
seconds or
yeah. If
so
you're
or
if you're
whatever. So as long as I've
blasting,
got a
like the
cooldown,
worst part
it's good.
is right after you land after 50%, and
Yeah,
she's all her abilities are empowered and stuff, and she's hitting a lot
yeah,
harder. I know when I first tried Mythic on it, she was like just one shotting me,
yeah.
and I had no idea why and stuff. That's where I learned to play Warrior.
Hmm. But
Just
yeah, but
kidding.
no,
I
I think
definitely did not. I didn't have DBM dungeon module installed all season, by the way, until yesterday, and I learned that it puts like the abilities that need to be interrupted on a cooldown above the ad that. And I was like, wow, no wonder this game is easy now. Like, no wonder we timed a +10 Dawnbreaker. I knew what to interrupt when it was about to be cast before it was
yeah,
cast because of DBM. Yet they don't want us to have our positions relative to each other shown with weak auras. Okay, whatever. Just
yeah.
hide everything, Blizz. Disable the API. Make add-ons useless. I'm just being a troll with that take. Obviously, add-ons are good for the game. All right, yeah, Dawnbreaker the best. Next one is the Necrotic Wake. I think I honestly don't know which one I did less, Necrotic Wake or Arakara. Uh,
Yeah,
I
I would
there's
say
like I
Necrotic
have like
Wake. No, I
three
think Necrotic
dungeons out
Wake.
of 10 that aren't timed,
Yeah,
on my score. But we're close enough to get score. And then I have a bunch of eights, and then I have two sixes, and it's Arakara and Necrotic Wake.
in
And I
Necrotic Wake. Yep,
just
exactly. There's no
Necrotic
reason to
Wake
go in.
on Tyrannical was impossible to do, and the ads just aren't fun if it's not Tyrannical. If it's on Fortified, it's just I don't know if the dungeon was scaled wrong. I don't know if it was bad. I don't remember if it was bad in Shadowlands. I feel like it wasn't.
Well, yeah. I mean, it was kind of annoying. Like, because the only bad thing in Shadowlands was the same thing that's kind of a pain point here, which is the lining up of the hook on the third boss. And they did something really stupid with the changes where they made the hook guys, the little ads that they spawn, do I don't think it stacks, but they do a constant AoE, meaning if you have more than one up, you're just going to die from the damage. And so that means if you miss one hook, if someone in your group
It
stands in the wrong
wipes.
spot, if they don't line it up, then you're going to get a second ad, then you're going to do that. Like, I understand, like, they don't want you to do something silly and have like five ads stacked up so that, you just never wipe, but you're already wasting time because the boss isn't targetable and you need to wait for the hook to come off cooldown before you do it again. You don't need to add the increased penalty for adding the damage. And that just made it, again, one of those bosses that, just like Arakawa, I never did it on any of my alts when I'm trying to pug to get score. I would only do it on fortified weeks because I knew at least then you you land
Yeah.
the hook once, you pop bloodlust, you kill the boss, it's over. But if he goes
Well,
back up
even I
again,
remember the
then
second boss being just a wall on Tyrannical. Like we got there and it's like, okay, all these ads spawn
hmm
and they all have extra health and you got to kill them quick. You can't. And now the boss
hmm
is not taking damage at all, and he just spawned new ads again, and it's just not doable. And it was
hmm
never it. I never went in there and was like, yeah, this is gonna be fun.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. No,
And
I assume we're both on the same page, but I think that's going to
yeah,
be on a
I think
reroll.
I actually have it lower than Arakara. Like I think like
Yeah.
as much as like the first boss was hard on +10 in Arakara, it was
Yeah.
a good boss still. Like a good tank defensive, a good run away from the ads that spawn and move the boss across the room, which I like as a tank and stuff. So like not a bad boss. Just Arkar was tough. Even that final boss, like fun, interesting mechanics. Just like I don't know why on a mythic difficulty all of a sudden the poison had to like come out of the sides of melee DPS. Why it wasn't just the
hmm
poison dot from heroic. Like why did it
hmm
have to be this obnoxious coming out of the sides of us? If they literally got rid of that, that boss is a lot better. Because I just like I killed our paladin yesterday, just not paying attention to where I was and stepping right on them and killing them. It's just stupid. Last one is the
Yeah.
stone vault. I think we agree on this one. I think this was one of the ones we ran the most, but I truly think it's just a dungeon. It's just it doesn't really have one bad thing about it. It just existed. It was good to do. I didn't mind doing it. We did it a lot. Um, there were some
Yeah.
difficult parts and bosses and stuff, um, but I don't remember.
They were difficult, but they were fair, I think.
Yeah,
And
even
that
the
was
ads that are
that's the
like
difference.
annoying in the ads that are annoying in the with the totems and stuff, and that
Yeah.
rock monster that does like a ton of damage and it stacks and stuff. Fair. Final boss is a little chaotic. The loader boss, like the council boss, is a little chaotic. Um, but overall, I think not too bad.
Yeah. And I
So
think if I remember correctly, this is the only trying to think back to all of the other dungeons, but this is the only one that has one of those. I think one of my favorite things with Mythic Plus, and we don't do it as much anymore, but thinking like especially back in Shadowlands, it was like the best example of this is when you start the dungeon and the tank just goes and pulls 20-25% of the dungeon. You pop lust and you just go ham. And this was the only dungeon that I actually think I ever remember like where that was kind of the route to do that big pull at the
yeah, the
beginning
big
and
pull at
go
the
really
start's
fast
kind of
with the
fun.
lost.
No, I
You
agree.
know,
I agree.
and it can be in that if one of those fears go off, then it's a wipe. But that's that's still fun. Like I'm thinking what was the second half of Hazavesh called the Gambit. Um,
Yeah,
you would do the same thing there.
the
That was
Murlocs, you
always
just pull
super
them all
fun.
the
Yeah,
way to the
you
boss
pull them.
or the
Yeah,
front there. Yeah.
yeah, that was always super fun. I think that's always something fun in a dungeon. But that's probably the only part of the dungeon that I was like, oh yeah, this is super
I
fun.
mean,
Everything else was
looking at
the
this,
bosses were stressful, but they're still fun.
it's kind of the only dungeon with like maybe besides City of Threads, but it's the only dungeon that's all hallways. That's all a
Mm,
stereotypical dungeon hallway. Like Grimbatal, you're in like a big open dwarven city. Siege of Borealis, you're in the whole city. Like Necrotic
hmm.
Wake doesn't have hallways. Arkara doesn't have hallways. You're in a big open like underground area. City of Threads is
Yeah,
partly hallways. Like none of these other dungeons had hallways like that, and
yeah,
yeah, I think Stone Vault worked. So
yeah,
I think it was a dungeon. I wouldn't mind if they ever brought it back, but I definitely didn't hate it either. It was a.
exactly.
I don't think I liked it better than Siege, Grim, Mists, or Dawnbreaker, which are above it, but it definitely was better than City of Threads, Arkar, and Necrotic
Yeah,
Wake. So just
yeah.
number
Which,
5.
yeah, which now that we've listed all of this, I know we're wrapping up soon, probably, but
Yeah, we
but
got to wrap up.
do you think it's problematic that of if we were just going to split it 4 and 4, three of the three new dungeons are in the bottom four for us, and only one of them are in the top four. Um, I know they did some changes for like Doom Patrol to make it better, and so that's sort of a
I
new
mean,
dungeon.
Grimbatal
But
was basically a new dungeon. Like
yeah,
the ad packs all did something different. It was basically just the models were all the same.
yeah.
Um,
I just think it's interesting to note that the Dawnbreaker seems to be the only new War Within dungeon that is like, okay, this was a banger.
yeah, I
Everyone
feel like
else
if we had done
seems
like a
like a miss.
season one, necrotic, like whatever season Necrotic Wake was in Shadowlands, I feel like if we did a tier list back then, it wouldn't have been last. So what happened with
Yeah,
Necrotic Wake that all of a sudden now it's the last? It was the worst dungeon this season.
yeah, yeah,
Um, but yeah, I do see that Stone Vault, City of Threads, and Arakara are basically 5, 6, 7. I don't know. I think it's interesting because like the most ambitious feeling dungeon, the Dawnbreaker, is the best one. Maybe that
yeah.
balances it out. And also, I think some of like it's kind of unfair because 4 of the dungeons that came out with the expansion have not been Mythic Plus yet. Like the
Hmm.
Rookery is obviously like your stereotypical first dungeon you're supposed to do when leveling, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's a good dungeon. It's gonna be a good dungeon in Mythic Plus. I can. It's one of the dungeons I've done the most on like normal heroic or whatever,
Hmm.
and at least my memory going through it in my head right now, it's a pretty straightforward dungeon. The bosses are pretty straightforward. The ads are going to be pretty straightforward. There is even a hallway that you could potentially like pull everything,
Do a big pull.
and sit at a spot.
Yeah,
So like the Rookery, I think is going to be our Giga Farm tier next season.
yeah,
Cinderbead Meadery is going to be insane in that first room. I don't know
yep.
how
Oh
that's going to
yeah.
get pulled, but eventually it'll get figured out. I think thematically, I love that dungeon. If I don't get a BEO title, I'm going to be very upset. And I'm trying to think what else. I unfortunately, if the new dungeon they're coming out with, Operation Water Down or whatever it's called,
Yeah.
Operation Watergate.
Yes.
If that's like the delve that's over there, we'll just have to see. Um,
Yeah.
but I'm trying to think the other two dungeons we didn't do. Uh, Dark Flame Cleft is going to be interesting. I don't know how that
I
darkness mechanic is going to work with a Mythic Plus group
yeah. I
because it
think that's
looks
gonna
like
be
someone's going
annoying,
to
but
run
I
off to
think
get a
that one's gonna be
candle and they're just going to die.
yeah. That's gonna be annoying. I think, and then the other one's the Priory, which I think will be a pretty good one.
Oh, Priory of the
The
Sacred Flame,
Priory. Yeah.
I think is the best dungeon they made this expansion. You're right. I think it's I think if we were to rank all 8 that were made this expansion, I think we legitimately got the worst 3. And again,
Okay.
Stonevault isn't necessarily bad. It's just not as good as Siege, Grim, or Mist. It could easily be in this top 2.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. I think we just got the worst 3 or hardest 3.
In the first season. But that's all right. That means you heard it here first. That
Yeah.
season 2 is guaranteed to be better than season 1. You heard it here first. You can clip this and save it for February.
Yeah. Clip this, save it for February. That you got a sneak peek. But no, I think Priory of the Sacred Flame, barring some weird Mythic Plus affix that makes it awful, is going to be
Yeah.
a top dungeon.
Dungeon. Yeah.
What are we going up against though? Theater of Pain. I
Mechagon.
remember Theater of Pain being a long dungeon. Oh, one half of
Yeah.
Mechagon. I just never liked Mechagon,
Actually,
but
yeah, I don't mind Mechagon.
it's the second half
Um,
too, right? Where we're going to be fighting the big mech at the end, the final boss at
yeah.
the end. And then, do you remember the last
Why
one?
can't I remember? I can't remember the last one. Why season 2?
Let me see. Season 2. uh,
Okay.
I'll look it up.
Oh, Motherload, obviously, duh,
Motherload.
Motherload. Which I
Yeah,
think that
Motherload's
one
pretty
might
good.
be.
Motherload.
Yeah,
I mean, there's some parts where like the ad packs are right on top of each other and stuff. It's pretty crowded, but
yeah,
ultimately, I think it'll be an okay dungeon. And it's not one that I think they have to change too much of.
yeah,
Same with Theater of Pain. So we'll just have to see.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, for some reason, I think the best dungeons of the expansion just weren't
Yet to come.
in season 1. So we'll just have to see.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was episode 12, the Warbound podcast. Forgetting the name of our own podcast. um, we are gonna be on a break until uh, probably 2025, and then we'll come back with
Probably.
episode 13 sometime in January. I
Yeah,
might be able to record while I'm on vacation, but we'll see.
yeah.
So yeah, thanks for coming, Thea, talking dungeons, and
Yeah.
yeah,
And happy Feast of Wintervale
happy
and
Feast
New
of
Year
Wintervale
and
and happy
everything.
holidays.
And yes.
So we'll see you guys next year.
Yeah. See you next year.